Hi, Dr. Vuong here. I had the honor privilege of sitting down with a really good friend of mine, Dr. Terry Simpson, who is a very famous and well-respected bariatric surgeon, author, and researcher. And he has a background not only in bariatric surgery, but also virology, where he did a lot of research on viruses. And so he's a really good expert on this COVID-19. In this interview, we discussed what makes COVID-19, this coronavirus, different than regular influenza, who's at risk, what are the leading risk factors, what you can do to prevent contracting it, what can you do if you do contract it. We also debunked some myths such as ibuprofen making it worse, vaccinations. It was a really good interview. Unfortunately, I failed to hit play for the first 5 minutes, so the video is going to pick up in the middle of our interview. But regardless, enjoy. If you found this helpful, I hope you'll share the video. Thanks. Bye.
The people who get this get exceedingly sick, and those are the ones that are bursting our healthcare system. And the final one is, if you get on a vent with pneumonia from influenza, you're going to be on the vent 2, maybe 3 days. Very few people, the recovery rate's about 80 or 90% of getting off a vent. If you get on a vent with this, you have about a 15% chance of making it out alive. And you're going to be on the vent 9 to 14 days. So this is a nasty virus for those that are affected by it.
Yeah, and they're really starting to look at this and saying, the ARDS, the acute respiratory distress syndrome that comes from this COVID is somehow different than just normal ARDS. I know that sounds weird, normal ARDS, but somehow it's different. Do you have anything to say about that, or you think it's too early?
It's completely different because it just destroys. This virus, if you get it in your lungs and you're having problems with your lungs, you have a race. You have a race between 3 things: your immune system killing the virus, your lungs being destroyed. And part of the problem is when the immune system are starting to destroy the lungs, then you really have a problem. We don't know why that is, but there are these people, their immune system just runs away and they say, we're going to kill everything. Because when an immune system starts killing something, there's the very specific part of the immune system, antibody, gets on top of the virus, makes it inactive, gets rid of it. And there's the very non-specific immune system, which sort of says, we're going to destroy this tissue so this virus, this foreign body won't have a chance. That's the part of the immune system that goes crazy with this virus.
So that's a good segue into my next question for you, which is who do you think are at risk for this coronavirus, this disease, for bad outcomes?
The worst people for outcomes on ventilators are people who are morbidly obese. When we look at all of the risk factors and the risk factors.
I thought this was an old person's disease. Isn't that what people were saying a few weeks ago? This only old people get this, only old people suffer from this. Why are you saying it's morbid obesity?
Because when you look on the ventilators and you look at those who die, the vast majority of them are morbidly obese. And while, yes, the older you get, the worse it is. And clearly in China, that was the case, in Italy, but China and Italy have one thing that we don't have in the United States. They have a very high smoking rate. And when you have a high smoking rate, you don't have much lung tissue to begin with if you've been that way. So men are always worse off, but morbid obesity, that's the thing that gets people on the vent and has a hard time getting off. And that's where my fellow bariatric surgeons are actually doing some good. Because if you get people into a better class of their obesity, you're going to save ventilator space, which means we have room for other people and other things.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that because most places have canceled elective surgeries and they consider bariatric surgery elective, and we can talk about when it looks like we might be able to go back to bariatric surgery. But I've been saying that this disease in America is going to start affecting younger and younger people, precisely by what you said, because of morbid obesity. Do you agree with that, or do you see that happening?
Well, they're certainly going to be, I don't know that they have any more, well, it's going to get everybody. It's going to get all of us if we don't have a vaccine. We can't hide that. We're not going to hide from this. We're all going to get it. And yes, when the morbid obese start getting it, they are the ones who suffer the most. So yeah, that's going to be the key demographic.
So apart from morbid obesity and age, what else puts you at risk, would you say?
Diabetes seems to be one of the bigger ones. Immune suppression is another one. Depends on the type of immune suppression, because some people with immune suppression actually do a little bit better. That's esoteric science. We don't need to get into it so much. But those are the primary ones: age, morbid obesity, hypertension, diabetes.
So I've gotten this question a couple of times regarding high blood pressure. If this virus is attacking this ACE inhibitor receptor, this ACE receptor, then does being on an ACE inhibitor help you or hurt you?
The answer is yes, or the other answer is sometimes. When you're on an ACE inhibitor, you upregulate your number of receptors. When you get put on a vent, you're probably not going to be taking your ACE inhibitor. So now you have an increased number of receptors, and the virus has more receptors to attack. So it's sort of like, are you at increased risk? Yes. Should you stop it? Probably not, because you want the lisinopril to bind to those ACE inhibitors so that the virus doesn't. So yeah, that is that maybe thing.
So what is something that, what are things people can really do to help protect themselves from this virus?
Stay away from other people. If you're an introvert, this is
a good time to be an introvert.
This is a great time. I'm not an introvert. You're not an introvert. This, it's like, I just want to go out and, have some breakfast or something at a deli. But no, this is the thing. And what I'm concerned about, and what I see in my community here, is more and more people are getting out. More and more people are testing the boundaries. You can't blame them. And they have to be constantly reminded. The other thing I worry about is people thinking a mask is a safety net or a security blanket. Because, all right, wear a mask if you feel comfortable. For God's sake, just stay inside. Don't go out. And the other thing I recommend to people who are parents is, like, designate one person that you're going to sacrifice, husband or wife. Because think of it. If you've got, I know it's horrible, but if you've got kids, you want one person to go out getting the groceries. You want one person to be careful. You don't want both of them going out and getting into trouble. So it's a practical thing.
So are you saying masks don't help you catch, or, do they help at all?
We don't know. A lot of the data used on masks is influenza, and influenza is not the same as COVID. They're two different viruses. They're two different sizes. We think that it could be aerosolized and given, but we don't have the information. But let me take you back to Wuhan, China, where I have been. It's a very industrial city. It's a great city. It has a lot of fashion. It's a beautiful city. You know what happens when someone gets a sniffle in Wuhan? They put on a face mask. Did that stop the beginning of this? It didn't. A lot of people in Southeast Asia, it is considered polite to wear a mask if you have a sniffle so you don't bother other people.
Yeah, so China is where this started, and they're hanging steady around 83,000 cases. New York today has over 90,000 cases, so New York has more than the entire country of China. Yeah. Do you believe the data coming from China, or do you think there's some cover-up? There's a lot of people with conspiracy theories.
There's always a conspiracy theorist out there, and I kind of think that you sort of have to say, whatever we can learn from there, we learn from there, and right now we have to learn from our new data. Because I don't know if it's a cover-up. We certainly know they didn't have the amount of test kits that we have now. And so we're going to get more information and more data from our own country or in other countries than we will from China. China, it's sort of burned through the population. Their stuff has worked. What we learned from them is men are affected more than women. Older people have more morbidity and mortality from the disease. And that if you put strict isolation, that's it. We've also got the sequence of the genome from them. We know the different genomes that are out there so we can track them. But pretty much we've learned kind of what we can. Whether their numbers are correct or not, it's kind of like, I'll leave that to the conspiracy theorists. I don't care. It's like, what can we do now where we are? You lost audio.
And you're wondering whether the bypass is better. That's not necessarily a true statement.
I understand he's done this before.
If you've been purposely, you will have learned a lot about it. Because unless you disappear and say, hey, I'm American, you're on my own.
You can't hear me?
And now I can.
Ah.
There you go. You just unplugged that. Really, You can. Do you want? I can send
It
you
was a
some
conspiracy
earpiece.
theorist. They're trying to shut me down.
But again, it's sort of like we can waste time talking about that as a society, but I think it's silly. I think what we have to do is say, what are we learning from New York? What are we learning from Los Angeles? And what are we learning from Florida? I mean, it's sort of like this guy doesn't close down his beaches, but then all of a sudden won't, as a humanitarian, take in the ships that have sick people. It's like, really?
Oh yeah, don't even get me started. That's really weird. Really weird. So, President Trump, whatever your politics are, said this week that
He blew it, yeah.
100,000 to 240,000 deaths, and we are currently at 2% death rate, 2.5% death rate in the United States. Which, if you do the math, it's going to be 5 million to 10 million cases in the U.S. alone. Do you think it's going to be about those numbers? Do you think it's going to be worse, better?
I think once we get to testing, we'll have a better idea. We just came out with a rapid test.
Mm-hmm.
Some hospitals have their own rapid tests. I think we're going to ultimately see that the total number of cases are much higher than that, and the death rate will be much lower in terms of percentage. In terms of how many people will die, when we look at what's going on in New York, where we're seeing 0.5 to 1.5%, again, we're inhibited by not having the testing data. We really are.
Yeah.
But it's pretty clear it's affecting a lot of people. It's a very contagious virus, and our hope is this.
How is this a death rate of 2.5%? And Italy today, their death rate's like 11%.
I know,
crazy high. That's a whole nother topic of discussion. But how does that compare to
pasta is not good, is what I gather out of that.
How does a death rate of 2, 3, 4% compare to the seasonal flu, just to put that in perspective for people?
Well, seasonal flu is usually a death rate of around 0.6 to 0.6%, depending on the flu. The worst flu in the world, we're more than that. The 1918 pandemic, we think that probably the death rate from that was 2 to 6%. So it's hard to say, but the more we test, the more we're going to find people positive, the more that percentage will go down. But thinking, will there be 100,000 deaths? That's not out of the realm of possibility at all. I think 200,000 might be more, but I'm thinking with we're seeing in California today, we only had 210 extra new cases. We're flattening out. So we're going to see some flattening.
So what do you say to people who say, yeah, exactly, Dr. Simpson, like, you test more people, the death rate's going to go down, and this is just not worth destroying our economies for. That, it's not as bad as everybody says, and we're ruining our economies, we're ruining the school systems, we're ruining everything, all for a much lower death rate, and this is all media hype. What's your response to that?
Well, the response is that you can't measure death rate just in what the virus kills. Because let's take New York City as an example, or Los Angeles as an example. A couple of days ago, New York City, the 911 system went down because it was overwhelmed with calls. There is no ventilator available in New York City today. So if you have garden variety pneumonia, if you have a heart attack and need to be put on a ventilator, you may die. You may not get there. It may not be there. So when the healthcare system is so overwhelmed by this 20% of people that go to the hospital, that means that everything else that is a problem that we have in our society, from broken legs to whatever, now is exacerbated. We go back to 100 years because we can't help people. So yeah, it is a big problem that way. And that's why we have, the Mercy and the ship coming in LA. And that's the big problem of it. It's like, yep, we may only have 100,000 deaths. I don't think 100,000, I don't think that's
a lot.
Right. Think of how much money we spent in Vietnam, and we had 55,000 deaths of our youngest, bravest, and best.
Right.
We're going to have 100,000 deaths.
Crazy.
That's a lot. We're going to have hospitals overwhelmed. So more people are going to die from heart disease, from cancer, from pneumonia. I mean, think about it. People are afraid to go to their doctors. So, think of the patients that you've known that have come in and said, well, I thought it was hemorrhoids and it turned out it was a rectal cancer. They may put going off to the doctor for a while because they're afraid. So this is a big problem. However, we are almost at the point where we can test everybody quickly. And that's what will solve our economy. We need to put the money into testing. Because imagine this. I walk into the hospital here. They take my temperature, ask a questionnaire, hand me a mask. You walk into the hospital and have my little slip. We're getting to the point where we can test people and have results back within 15 minutes. The ability to do that means we can open up people and say, all right, you have green light, go. You can go out and you can wander about. If you get symptoms, because we're going to test you, and every time you come into a place, we're going to check your temperature. You come into our restaurant, you kind of check your temperature. You come into our hospital, we're going to check your temperature. But once a week, you can be tested. And if you're clean, fine. Or if you have antibody positive to it, so we know you've been exposed, you're making antibody to it, you're safe, you have a green light, go. We're at the point where it's cheaper now to mass produce the tests than it is to close our economy. So that's the answer to keeping it open.
Mass testing, and that's quick and easy. That's really amazing. You mentioned the Vietnam War, and I don't know if you remember, but I'm a Vietnamese boat person. I'm a Vietnamese immigrant. So, America really touches my heart, So I'd like to speak to the people of heartland America, our breadbasket, the centers, like places like Nebraska and Wyoming, and the states that don't have that many cases. And they just don't understand what the big fuss is. What can we tell them? What wisdom would you give them?
I think that there were those of us who are my fellow virologists, my fellow physicians who were in this, when we saw this first cases land in America, I changed my behavior. But I went up against a lot of people, like my brother, who's very right-wing. And finally, when they start seeing what happens, they believe it. And a lot of people don't have that imagination. But it will come to your community, because no community is going to shut itself off. We're not going to dig moats, pull centuries out. Communities aren't going to shut itself off. So it's going to come. And unfortunately, when it comes, it doesn't take long to spread. I mean, think about it. A month ago in California, there weren't even a few hundred cases.
Mm-hmm.
That's how fast it spread. So,
I want to talk about that spread here in a second, because I'm really worried about India. I want to see if you have the same concerns as I do. But speaking to what this vein about the United States, I've been telling people that it's going to probably peak in mid-May. But now it seems like we're going to have different states peaking at different times.
Yeah.
Like New York is going to peak Washington, I think, has already peaked. They've been around 500 cases. They're, where the
Seattle's going down. The rest of the states
are
going to peak a little bit, but certainly the major metropolitan areas down. Yeah, California is probably going to peak in a couple of weeks if it hasn't already. We're seeing sort of a leveling off. But you're right, different states. So there's a couple things that will sort of save us. The more sunlight we get, we know for certain that this virus stays on surfaces for hours, unless they're copper surfaces. The more sunlight there is, the more the virus degrades. As we get into the summer season, we will see more virus degradation, which means there will be less people getting infected. So it's going to be like influenza in that way, in that in the summertime, it will die down. Our hope is we can get more tests, develop maybe a vaccine, see if we get an antibody test. And those are all things, so when the fall comes and it comes back, we will be better prepared for it.
That's a good segue to my next question, which is talk about the cycles. You think it's going to come back? Let's say we get through this mid-May, June, it's starting to die down. And I've been warning people, because exactly what you said, the ventilators, these patients are on the ventilators for 2-3 weeks. So there's a lag time with deaths. If we're peaking in the beginning of May, now we're having the peak of deaths in the middle of May, June, and then people are going to be panicking. And then we maybe have a break in July, but then it's going to come back again. Is it in October?
Yeah, it's most certainly will.
And
because
I don't think we'll have a vaccination ready by then. I mean, it's 12 months to 18 months for a vaccination.
Well, think about it. We've been looking for a vaccine for HIV for 20 plus years. We don't have one yet. You can't count on a vaccine. Now, the difference is it's hard to make vaccines for retroviruses, and I know I'm getting a little bit wonky here. It's a little easier for coronaviruses. I mean, anybody who owns a cat probably has vaccinated a cat against feline distemper, which is a coronavirus. Cats are prone to get coronaviruses. You can give your cat this disease, and your cat probably can give it to its friends and neighbors. So another reason to get rid of all the cats in the world. But
I'm gonna get hate mail now from all the cat
I
lovers from you.
know,
Thank
I
you.
know. But
So then tying in what you said earlier, then maybe our approach should then be to get the antibody testing plus this rapid testing in preparation for the next fall wave that's coming.
oh yeah, imagine the things that we can do. South Korea led the way, Taiwan led the way. Everybody is tested. Everybody is tested frequently. You have the ability to, let's say we find out, all right, you are positive, you need to self-isolate. And we put this, so now your phone says red. Now we can monitor your movements on your phone. And if you walk outside the zone, you automatically get a fine on your phone of $2,000 or they come and arrest you. We have the technology to do that. I don't know if you saw, but a company geotagged everybody that went into Florida.
I
all the
saw that
spring
where they all
breakers,
went.
and then where they all went. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, it's sort of like,
Crazy.
you know, the old story, the farmer goes out and gets coronavirus and comes back and infects the herd. You know, I mean, these things happen.
Yeah. So I want to talk about India and maybe some troublesome hotspot areas that you're seeing in the United States, and then talk about when are we going to get back to normalcy and bariatric surgery, elective surgeries, things like that, because that's really, our patients are watching us trying to figure out, you know, when their lives are going to go back to post-bariatric surgery.
And they're at home and eating, because that's what
I know.
do you know alcohol consumption's up 55%, or alcohol sales are up 55%?
Can you blame them that?
No.
That's
No. I want the recipes. The most popular closed Facebook thing for surgeons was the whiskey one. It's like, we're dying here. In terms of getting back, yeah, we'll have some time this summer, and we should use the time to prepare. Because while New York will have gone through it and be ready for the next wave, places that are going to be the smaller cities in America are going to get hit in the fall and in the next winter.
So what do you want to say about what's happening in New Orleans and Detroit and maybe some other areas that you see that are at risk? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're going to hit the population dense places first, and those are all them. I mean, New Orleans having Mardi Gras, and you know, it's like now we're reaping the rewards of Mardi Gras. Plus, New Orleans is a very cultural city. There's lots of people coming in and going out, a lot of visitors. So yeah, New Orleans is going to get hit hard. Detroit, another dense place. But those places are going to get through it in the next while. But again, imagine this. We could reopen once the surge is through. We're back in business for bariatric surgery, for example, back in business for elective surgery. And for most cities in the United States, hospitals are the place where they are the economic engine. They're the most common industry besides the hospitality industry, which is getting hurt terribly. Use Uber Eats, tip your server. We need to get those hospitals back in that business, because it's killing the economy. It's killing all of us.
So what if, and this is my warning, maybe I'm wrong, but we get over this and we start to let down our guards, but the Southern Hemisphere is now starting to go into their winter months, right? And so what if they get an uptick in coronavirus and we lessen our borders?
The great thing about this virus is we're going to get more infected from people in our own country than anybody else. I mean, that happened about 2 months ago. This virus is not like the ever-changing influenza virus, which every year, like I said, comes out with a new coat, new purse, so we have to bake a new vaccine to it. This virus is pretty stable genetically on its surface where we make the antibodies to. But that could change. So we could get a vaccine, or your own immunity could get stuck again with this. It hasn't happened yet, but it could happen.
So if there is and it's really funny, I saw your partner, Dr. Billy, bring this up on a telecast the other day, but the conversation about when will it be safe to go back to business as usual, bariatric surgery, what's the conversation surgeons and hospital administrations having right there?
Well, we don't have, many hospitals don't have great leadership. There are, chairmen of surgery in my day were people who are these august individuals, well-published, well-thought of, bright, scholarly people. Now they're kind of anybody who wants to be chairman and wants to run a program. So I don't see the leadership in a lot of places where they are going to come out and say, these are the parameters by which we need to get back to work. But again, the parameters for the hospital are going to be, we're going to test people, we're going to test our staff, we're going to test patients. As long as this is a threat and until we have a good antiviral or thing, that's how we will be able to get back to the hospital business, not only for bariatric surgery, but colon and rectal surgery, people with colon cancers, people with diverticulitis, heart surgery. They seem to be exempt from this, but if you don't have a vent, you can't help them. But that's what we need to do. We cannot depend upon the virus burning through the population, killing everybody, doing the Monty Python, bring out your dead. Then now it's over, let's go back to work. We really have to nip it in the bud now because we have
we have that double-edged sword where we say, hey, we can help. The number one risk factor is morbid obesity, and our surgery helps that.
Right.
But they're also
even in the first month.
Right.
I mean, think about it. Most patients lose about 15% of their excess body weight the first month after weight loss surgery. Anytime someone loses 10%, you have tremendous health benefits. So here are these patients the first month after surgery, they're taking their shakes and everything. They're in the best nutritional shape of their lives, and they're losing weight, and they're becoming less risky. So yeah, bariatric
That's actually a good question too, where do you think that someone who's post-op from weight loss surgery, because there were a lot of people who had surgery like a few weeks ago, like are they at more or less risk for COVID-19 if they are, let's say, 1 month to 6 months post-op from weight loss?
They're getting to the point, they're still using a lot of supplements to maximize their vitamins and stuff, which is probably good. Hopefully they're eating better. Look behind me. Look who's there. Look who's there.
Oh, what's up, Dr. Billy?
So they're at a pretty good nutritional thing. The thing that you and I both have this long-standing campaign is you've got to keep eating better. You've got to increase the fruits and vegetables and legumes. And we're always fighting the people who say you should only eat chicken.
All right. Well, we've been going a pretty long time here. Just a couple of real quick questions from our audience here. Any natural supplements they can take, like elderberry, anything like that? Would that help with this disease or no?
There has been no efficacy shown in it. They've done some minimal trials in it. It doesn't really help. The best thing still is stay at home. I wish elderberry worked because
I use it.
I wished it worked. If it worked, that'd be great. But there isn't much good evidence for this one yet. Actually, it increases the cytokines. So it's sort of like if you get COVID, that's the last thing you want to do.
What about the treatments? You hear about it with the anti-malarial drug, chloroquine and azithromycin, the Z-Pak.
Well, chloroquine and azithromycin together block the QT channel in the heart, and so there's a danger of widening QT and heart stopping. So that shouldn't be done just willy-nilly. There have been 3 studies, 2 bad ones, 1 good one. The 2 bad ones say, wow, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but when you actually look at the data, it's not that good. The one study that just came out of China said, oh, look at how great it is. They saved 1/4 of a day, but it wasn't a double-blinded study. So it's like, hey, we'll check this. I mean, you can't depend upon a non-double-blinded study when you say less than a day. And
I agree with that. I think a lot more testing and data people are jumping on this combo.
And the problem is there are patients who need those drugs. I mean, if you have a patient who has lupus or rheumatoid arthritis that are on Plaquenil, they need the drug and they can't get it.
So I think we're on the same page. You wouldn't think that, uninfected people should take it prophylactically.
No,
is that correct?
No, not at all.
Wouldn't help.
No, wouldn't help. There's no evidence that it'd help. The stuff that's been done has been trying to decrease their days on ventilators, and it's just not. I wish it worked. I really do. We all wished it worked.
Yeah, that's great. Couple questions. What about gloves? What do you think about wearing gloves to grocery stores, wiping things down? Is that helpful or not helpful?
Well, probably, we talked about this before camera. Probably one of the things that we've noticed more than anything in the epidemiology of this is people get it when they're eating out together. Think about when you're eating out together at a restaurant. You don't know who was at the restaurant before you. Oftentimes the table's just sort of slathered dry with some wet towel that has been used, for God knows what. Nobody changes the salt and pepper shakers. Nobody changes how the Heinz ketchup is there. The silver, the silverware and the plates, they're usually pretty clean. They have industrial strength dishwashers. but everything else in a restaurant isn't. So when you look at the cases in Los Angeles, for example, if you look at the chart of where it comes, it goes right down Wilshire Boulevard. I can't think of a group of people that eat out more than there. If you look at what's happened in New York, it's predominantly in Manhattan. They eat out a lot there.
That's fascinating.
So part of it's, and Milan, I mean, you don't cook at home in Milan. You eat out every day. So, you know, the contact is fine. So wearing gloves out when you're shopping, great. Just don't touch your face with them. That's one way you can avoid them. You know, wiping down things with sterile things, that's great. I actually prefer a dilute solution of bleach or a solution of hydrogen peroxide. Spray it on, let it dry. That's more effective than wiping it with the Clorox wipes.
Yeah, I agree with that. The question about
By the way, that's 2 tablespoons of bleach in a quart of water, just so people know.
Yeah, it's pretty dilute. What's your take on the ibuprofen controversy? Is it good to take ibuprofen or not? Where do you stand with that?
I think that's correlation and not causation. And I'm sure you got the same things where they sent you, usually in private message, some radio guy saying, I talked to this doctor and this doctor said it made it worse. And it's like, before that came out, if you had what you thought was a cold, you'd probably take ibuprofen.
Yep.
And you'd probably take a lot of it. I mean, when I was sick with pneumonia, I was taking ibuprofen all the time. So it's correlation, it's not causation. It actually decreases cytokines. It's actually probably, theoretically, it should be good, and there's no good reason why it wouldn't. Now, what's interesting is when we look back at the 1918 flu, which affected young people more than older people, you know, one of the treatments was 30 grams of aspirin, and a lot of these people bled out of their lungs. That was probably a bit too much.
too much aspirin there.
So if you, I mean, and it's like, so I think it's correlation. I don't think it's causation. I think anybody that you did before that came out would have said, yeah, I took Advil.
Yeah.
They weren't, they never checked, by the way, Tylenol levels to see if it had the same thing. So if you feel good about taking Tylenol, fine. If I get it, I'm going to take Advil.
This is my last question for you, because I got this question a lot, and I just want to confirm, you know, what I know about virology too. If you catch this coronavirus, can you catch it again? There's a lot of myths kind of going back and forth on the internet that you may be able to catch it again. What say you, Dr. Simpson?
So that was part of the China data that came out. And part of the people said is, wow, this person got sick and then they caught it again. So it was clearly coronavirus both times. And if you talk to people, and I know you've had it, I've had it, I think I had this back in December. I had the worst cold. I couldn't shake it. Dr. Billy was telling me in January he was disabled by a cold. Now he tells me he was disabled by a cold. I was all around him. But that was all probably influenza B, which was highly prominent and a pretty bad actor. When you don't test, you don't know. We do know that people develop antibodies to this. And not only do they develop antibodies, but the most successful test to date are when they've taken those antibodies out of people who've had it and give them to vent patients. They seem to turn this around. So the data is pretty good that you probably aren't going to get it again this year, maybe next year.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. A lot of comments right now from the bariatric community, and I want to get your take on this, where they say bariatric patients aren't supposed to take ibuprofen. That's a no-no. Where do you fall on that?
Why do they say that?
Because every freaking bariatric surgeon tells them they can't take ibuprofen, which is a fucking myth. My first F-bomb!
Okay, so the most common procedure done in the United States is the gastric sleeve. And we know that within 2 weeks of taking the gastric sleeve, your mucosa has covered everything. And sure, you can always get an ulcer from ibuprofen or aspirin or Advil. That doesn't mean it's a contraindication. It means you have to be careful. You can't be crazy about it and take so, because without having bariatric surgery, if you take too much ibuprofen too often, you can get a stomach ulcer, you can get a perforation. We've all seen those. That doesn't mean you can't take it. So I always say to people, don't take it for a couple weeks after we do your surgery. If you take a lot, make sure you do a proton pump inhibitor or some Pepsid, not Zantac anymore, by the way, that's out. But, you know, we recalled all of Zantac for cancer. So I think that's kind of one of those myths that you just can't kill.
But what about bypass patients? Are they at a higher risk?
Well, bypass patients, typically when we find ulcers in them, there is a case where they have taken a lot of non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, and on the jejunal side of the anastomosis will have an ulcer. But again, that's just when we see those, we see they have taken that. There isn't.
Yeah, and I
So
think
again,
it's actually, I think the old studies were actually smoking plus ibuprofen is really
right.
bad for
Yeah.
gastric bypass.
And I gave up smoking, so anybody can.
If you can do it, I can. Anybody
I
can
know,
do it.
I gave
know,
up.
that's right. I'd like you to just real quick, I want to just thank you for all your work. I mean, I know that we've got a lot of viewers watching right now, and a lot of them don't know what an awesome, special person you are. And I just want to take this moment to honor you and tell you
Thank you.
how much I look up to you. You've been doing bariatric surgery for a long time. You're one of the forefathers. I'm not calling you old, but you are very respected.
It's blonde hair. It's platinum. It's the original platinum blonde.
You're very respected in our community, and whenever you go to conferences, everybody wants to talk to Terry Simpson. And you just made this move from Phoenix, Arizona, out to Ventura, California. So I'd love to let you have an opportunity to talk about your new practice, maybe plug your location, when, if you're taking new patients, how do they get a hold of you?
We're doing it all by telemedicine for the moment, because that's what we have to do. We're hoping that, and I think a lot of bariatric surgeons out there are doing the same. So if you are wherever you are and you need weight loss surgery, find your local surgeon, and you may have to start with telemedicine, and that's fine. We can do that. No, I've known Dr. Billy a long time. We've known each other a longer than we would ever care to admit. And originally, I tried to recruit him to Arizona because, as you know, I had this really nice practice in Arizona. And he thought about it, I think, for maybe 30 seconds. I'm not sure. But I took him to a nice restaurant where we could see all the beautiful things, the city. And then he said, I really can't do it. Why don't you think about coming to Ventura? So I thought about it, and then the fires came, and the mudslides came, and the earthquakes, and the locusts, and the plagues. And I said to my wife, I said, I've known him so long, I got to go down. We have to go there and tell him I'll just stay in Phoenix, and he should come out there. And we got here, and I looked around, and my wife said, you're not going to have that conversation, are you? No. So anyway, Dr. Billy and I are both gray in the haired, experienced bariatric surgeons here in Ventura. He's been here a long time. He's got a great reputation internationally and certainly locally. And it's fun to be with a colleague who you can bounce stuff off to, and someone who is thoughtful and careful in the operating room. And that's a hard combination to find always, someone that you can get along with and do things with. Not easy, but it's great. So we really like it. We like operating with each other. I like giving him a hard time. He likes trying to bring me donuts in the morning to break our rivalry. Things. Yeah. But
how do they find you if they want to get in contact with you guys?
drsimpson.com is easiest way to find me, drsimpson.com.
Mm-hmm.
And they can find me that way. And on Facebook. I mean, I'm on Facebook by...
You are.
Yeah, I have
you have great videos, by the way. You do great cooking videos.
We just released a cooking video where I taught Dr. Billy how to make an amazing sauce with green beans.
That was embarrassing that Dr. Billy didn't know how to grind the pepper shaker. That pepper.
Well, we're getting, but I mean, our whole thing, as you know, because of my culinary thing, I want patients to cook, because the more they cook at home, the better results that they will have.
So drterrysimpson.com. Any final last encouraging words for those watching, Doc?
We're going to get through this, and we're going to get over this. And if we use the technology, it will be faster. And please encourage the leaders of your community to encourage people to do that, because we want to get through this. We want to get the economy started again. But, and no, you'll probably get this, and you'll probably be just fine. But if you're not, there are a lot of really good, dedicated doctors out there that'll take care of you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time and all your efforts and all your teaching.
Where are you located now? I see this Texas A&M thing.
I'm in Houston. Some people don't think I'm a really doctor, so.
Really?
Yeah, I know. I retired. They're like, you're not practicing. You can't be called a doctor. I went to med school. I have a diploma. You have to call me doctor.
I know. And, I mean, They didn't charge you that much for that diploma, did they? I mean,
Oh,
no,
not too
he's
much.
no. I've known Dr. Vuong a while. And actually, I got this book one time and said, "You're mentioned in this book by this surgeon," and it's like, really?
Yeah, that was in the early days, man. You were a lap band forefather for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, man. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and
Good
I think
talking with you.
my audience
Thank you
is
for
going to
having
be
me on.
awesome.
We'll
Hey,
see you
everybody!
later.
If you guys have enjoyed this, and if you guys have enjoyed this, and if you guys want more of these sort of interviews, please do a favor, hit share. There are a lot of people who still are not taking this social distancing thing seriously, and we really need to get this message out.
I'm wearing a condom as we speak.
All right. On that note, I actually forgot to hit record in the first 5 minutes of this interview. But I'll put what I have up on YouTube, and you can also share it from there. Thank you guys very much for watching. Love ya. See ya. Take care. Bye.